The NFL offseason is in full swing, and there have already been a ton of moves, both good and bad. On Wednesday, we discussed a lot of the signings that have taken place and how the acquired players will impact their new teams. And in today's video, we are going to be grading a couple of the biggest moves of the 2023 NFL offseason so far. And there will be a couple of signings discussed that we did not get to on Wednesday, and even discuss a trade or two as well. We will be breaking down what it means for the franchise that traded them, and what it means for the franchise they either left in free agency or were traded from. And there is a lot to break down with each move in today's video, and without further ado, let's begin. And we are starting today's video by discussing the Bucs signing of veteran quarterback Baker Mayfield. Baker signed a 1-year, $8.5 million deal with the Bucs, and I absolutely love this signing for Tampa. Entering the 2023 season with Kyle Trask as their starting quarterback was always going to be unlikely, and to date, he is just 3 of 9 for 23 yards in his entire career. They were never going to head into the season with this unclear of an answer at quarterback, meaning they were always going to bring in somebody, whether that was Andy Dalton, who signed with the Panthers, or Taylor Heinicke, who signed with the Falcons, or, as we know now, Baker Mayfield. And bringing in Baker in this situation, to me, is the textbook definition of a low-risk, high-reward signing, or at least the potential to have a high reward, because he's going to have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin to throw to, and had an encouraging end to his 2022 season with the Rams. Was Baker a great player for LA? No, absolutely not, but within the 5 games he played with the team, he led a double-digit fourth quarter comeback over the Raiders, and granted it was over the Raiders, who finished with a top 10 draft pick, but there was a lot to like within that game. He had 2 big-time throws per PFF, and looked like Baker during his Oklahoma days, and at times when he flashed with the Browns. The high-energy, big-game player that steps up when the lights are brightest. They then went into Lambeau, and for all of the highs Baker has as a player, he can have very low lows, and the next couple of games showed this. And to sign a quarterback for $8.5 million, while other quarterbacks in today's NFL are earning well north of $40 million, to me is a great addition for Tampa. Is Baker going to be a grand slam of a signing, and is he going to lead Tampa to a Super Bowl title in what would subsequently be their second in 4 years? Probably not, and in fact I would put the chance of that happening as very, very low. But it's not unreasonable for the Bucs to win the division, and as long as the offensive line does not get pummeled as much as it did against the Cowboys in the wild card round of the playoffs last year, like it did, anything can happen in the postseason. And again, I'm not saying the Bucs are going to be champs next year, because they probably won't be, but you never know if you get to the dance, which of course is the playoffs. On the opposite side of this, there's also a chance Baker plays terrible and the Bucs lose a lot of games because of Baker trying to play hero ball. And I realize that sounds terrible initially, but there is a long-term positive to this. 2023 could be a very bad season for Tampa, and they could wind up with Caleb Williams from USC, who is regarded as the best prospect in the 2024 NFL Draft from a quarterback standpoint, or Drake May, who is regarded as the second best quarterback in the 2024 NFL Draft. I think this is a boom or bust signing, and with how little they are paying for Baker, and for a franchise like Tampa, a team that is picking at 19 in the 2023 NFL Draft, and clearly out of the top 4 quarterback conversation, I love this signing. This grade has the most variance out of any in today's video because of where this could take the franchise, but with the low risk and high reward for only $8.5 million, we give this an A grade. And we are staying in the NFC South for the next signing, and it is Derek Carr to the New Orleans Saints. Carr signed a 4-year, $150 million deal with the team, with 100 of it being guaranteed. The big thing to remember, and I will continue to say this, is to look at the guarantees, because the 4 for $150 for Derek Carr initially looks, or sounds at least, not great, but this will probably end up being a 3-year contract. He will have a dead cap hit of just $11 million in 2026, and if he is still starting for them by then at age 35, he would have a cap hit of $55 million. So there eventually is a way out for the Saints, but I am not the biggest fan of this contract for several reasons. The Saints effectively gave the bag to a player that's not all that good and has thrown 25 or more passing touchdowns in a season just once over the past 6 years. And Carr making the Pro Bowl this past year, despite being benched and despite failing to live up to the lofty expectations he and the team had this year, shows why the Pro Bowl is considered a watered-down accomplishment and why people don't take it that serious. He finished 3rd in interceptions in 2022 and 6th in 2021, and I don't really understand what the Saints' long-term plan here is. They've been in a horrific situation with cap space for not just a year or two, but going back several years now, and I don't think adding a player who is pretty average as a quarterback is going to be their long-term solution. And if you are a Derek Carr fan and think average is insulting to his level of play, he's average at best, as if he were good at the most important position in sports, he would not have been benched for Jarrett Stidham to begin with. And I also know there's a crowd out there that will defend Derek Carr because of how bad the Raiders' defenses were for all of those years, and I completely understand where you're coming from, as it is extremely frustrating watching your quarterback make plays only for the defense to fail the team time after time after time. But a couple of the Raiders' losses this year were in games Carr played terrible. The season opener against the Chargers set the tone for how their season would go, and in the aforementioned Baker Mayfield comeback win over the Raiders game, Carr finished just 11 of 20 for 137 yards and threw 2 interceptions. Now, it would be ignorant to say the entire 2022 Raiders season completely falls on Carr because that's simply not true. But I don't think you go from Andy Dalton to guaranteeing Derek Carr $100 million and think, yes, we won the jackpot and we are going to the promised land. In a weird way, I guess this is better than bringing back Andy Dalton at age 36 and trying to run it back with him, but I don't see the vision here, and not only that, but I think they are a division-winning maximum team. The NFC South is one of, if not the worst divisions in all of football, and sure, Derek Carr has the capability of winning the NFC South over Baker Mayfield, Desmond Ridder, and presumably CJ Stroud, or at minimum another rookie quarterback in 2023, but are the Saints going to make noise in the postseason after the wild card round? To me, the answer is no, and I think their ceiling is the 4 seed with a 9-8 record and only setting the franchise a couple of years further back by giving Derek Carr this big of a contract, a C- grade. Next up is the Darren Waller trade, and within this we will be discussing both the Giants and Raiders side. For the Giants side, this is pretty obvious. They went to the divisional round of the playoffs last year, and within the playoff loss to Philly, their leading receiver was Richie James, who had 7 catches for 51 yards. They had to get better from a receiving standpoint, and especially when factoring in, they just re-signed quarterback Daniel Jones to a 4-year deal. Given they just released receiver Kenny Golladay, who was a massive free agent bust, this was a real test for GM Joe Schoen, as everyone knew the Giants would be active in both free agency and, as we saw, on the phone with other teams. And I love this trade for New York because they gave up a 3rd-round pick, and not an early 3rd-round pick either. It is the 3rd-round pick from the Kadarius Toney trade, which belonged to the Super Bowl champion Chiefs. So to give up a 3rd-round pick for a player as unique as Darren Waller in what's a very pivotal year for the Giants, I'm all for it. And the reason it's such a pivotal year for them is they not only made the playoffs last year, but they won a playoff game. And with winning a playoff game for the first time since 2011, there is a target on their back. Not as big as a team like the Eagles who made the Super Bowl per se, but they are not the same old Giants. Yes, there is concern with Darren Waller, as he's played just 20 games over the past 2 years, but you have to take risks in order to win a championship. They could still go receiver with the 25th pick in the draft next month and have weapons for Daniel Jones to work with, like Jordan Addison, Darius Slayton, Darren Waller, and of course, Saquon Barkley. They also have a developmental tight end in Daniel Bellinger, who was a 4th-round pick in 2022. I think this is a low-risk, high-reward trade for them, and I give it an A+. For the Raiders, and especially their fan base, it's sometimes tough to see a player as talented as Waller go, but I really like the value they got in this trade. As mentioned, he's played in 20 of 34 games in the past 2 years, and given how loaded of a tight end class this is, I don't want to say he's easily replaceable because when he's healthy, he is one of the best tight ends in the league, but it's not going to be hard to find production from this draft class. And on top of it, the Raiders already have one of the best receivers in football in Davante Adams, and just signed Jakobi Meyers too. So it's not going to be hard to spread the ball around to other playmakers. On top of it, Waller is not a good run blocker, and that part of his game is easily replaceable. I am very eager to see who the Raiders choose to replace Waller, and to be clear, I do think they should bring back Foster Moreau, but to get a 3rd-round pick for a player on the wrong side of 30, who you got 2 1,000-yard seasons out of, by the way, to me is a win. And for the Raiders, I give this an A. Next up is the Bengals signing of free agent tackle Orlando Brown Jr. There's a couple of things to discuss with this signing, and the first is it's an upgrade for Cincinnati, which is huge. They are in a very tight window with the rookie scale contracts, and that's not to say as soon as Burrow gets paid, their chances go out the window, because it's not saying that, but it is saying the players they will be able to sign will not be as open as it is now. So I love this signing in this aspect. What's even better for Cincinnati is it's a front-loaded deal for Orlando, meaning it will probably be a 3-year deal at most, unless he plays at a truly elite level for the first 3 years of the deal, meaning the team is very much protected from a long-term standpoint. The other thing to discuss with the signing is, yes, it is an upgrade, but Orlando is not one of the best left tackles in football. It's important that the Bengals protect Joe Burrow, as we've seen over the past few years, and I like that they are investing in the offensive line. I just don't want it to come across like they got the best or even the 2nd best left tackle in the league, because they most certainly did not. But the Bengals did improve their line, which is huge, and because of how smart of a deal this is, we give this an A. From Cincy to Philly we go to discuss both corners in James Bradberry and Darius Slay. The biggest thing here is they retain both guys while not committing that much future money. Yes, the initial deals for each sound like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not all that much. Not only that, but there is a very good chance they still get one of the best corners in the draft with either of their first-round picks, and I'm speaking more about 10 here than 31. Both Bradberry and Slay will stay long enough to still play at a solid level, maybe not necessarily an all-pro level as Darius Slay was starting to show his age towards the end of the 2022 season, but good enough to keep the Eagles secondary from, for lack of a better word, being awful. I still think they could add someone like Christian Gonzalez or Devin Witherspoon at number 10, and we give these re-signings a B+. I do want to quickly discuss the running back market, which involves a former Eagle in Miles Sanders. Miles very quietly finished top 5 in the NFL in rushing yards in 2022, and I know the initial reaction may be $25 million for a running back is crazy, especially for Miles Sanders, but an average value of $6.25 million while only guaranteeing $13 million, I'm all for it to help out the next quarterback. We've heard how the Panthers have no weapons and how they will have to spend draft capital on a receiver or even two, and that is true, but to save a draft pick and basically use Miles as a stopgap starter for a year, if not two, to save a pick in a year where you need to fill other holes on the roster is a good signing. I don't think he will be anywhere close to the player statistically he was in 2022, and I do want that part to be clear. So for that signing, we give it a B+. There are several other grades on the screen at the moment based on value, guarantees, and what the players can bring to his new team, but that's going to wrap up today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, as it would mean the world and help the growth of the channel a ton. And until next time, as always, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.